All right, well, welcome to our walk here on Cwic Show. I wanted to cover a few different topics here in this walk. We had a recent news article that came out in San Francisco with our friend and President Nelson's very good friend, Amos Brown, Reverend Amos Brown, at the I think it's the Third Baptist Church. Can't remember exactly his name, but they had a get-together where they called a meeting and a press conference because the crime had been getting so bad in the area. It's in Fillmore, which is in the San Francisco area. And it's interesting because, and by the way, as I've said before, I really do think that the relationship with the church and the NAACP is going to bear a lot of great fruit. I really do. But listening to Amos Brown here, he sounds like he could be hosting Cwic Show. And so let me just go through a few of his quotes here about the crime that's happening and the homelessness that's happening in the area there in Fillmore, San Francisco. He says, "My grandma used to say, 'Your freedom ends where my nose begins.'" And he goes on to say, "When homeless folks cause problems, their freedom ends. That's not being mean. It's being what I call engaging in responsible compassion." You know how I've used the term misplaced compassion a lot with critical social justice. This is the exact same concept. You can't let compassion run wild without any guardrails of reason. And sometimes, we tend to be moving in that direction quite a bit in our society today. And he says, drug dealers are not worried about signs because there's all this drug problem around in the area as well. Well, that's what the speaker says. "We need roving security to make sure that the children and the elderly can shop without being harassed and accosted." What they're talking about here, they go on to say, and Reverend Brown goes on to say, we need more police. And he talks about Pacific Heights, which is a well-off area just adjacent to Fillmore, and how things are cleaned up and taken care of there. He talks about how it's more of a white neighborhood, but he's calling for more police to be in their neighborhood. And this is the natural consequence of defund the police or get rid of the police. And I find it fascinating. This is exactly what President Oaks said in his address at BYU in 2020, and talking about clear thinking. He said, look, of course Black Lives Matter, as far as a phrase, as far as an idea. But don't go along with all of these concepts, these ridiculous concepts that are tagged along to this banner of BLM. They don't make any sense. And he specifically brings up defunding the police and getting rid of the police. And here you have Reverend Amos right in line with President Oaks here. He goes on and says, this is the executive director of the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing in the San Francisco area, in San Francisco. And this director says fentanyl has really changed the game. I'm going to guess that most of you know someone who has had a problem with fentanyl. This is this is a horrible issue, a horrible problem. We have friends whose, spouses and children have really had issues with this, to the point of near death and hospitalization, and of course clinics, getting to a clinic and detoxing and really, stealing their lives from them. I had someone I worked with just a month or two ago that was going through this, and I was working with him for about 5 weeks, and it was really interesting because after a while I was able to help him. I think he wanted to make this move, but I was able to help him a little bit in cleaning up, and the difference in just his countenance was incredible. Just I came to see him one day, and I looked at him, and he talked to me for a little bit, and I just instantly knew that he was clean. It was that much of a difference. Think about what these things do to your spirit. And I think that's a big reason for the word of wisdom. It's not just a health code for our bodies. It is, but it's not just a health code. I think it has a lot to do with the idea of sobriety, and a lot to do with our spirits and the ability to act based on that sobriety and be able to have full access to your agency. It's like the temple. Look how we keep the temples. Look how important it is for us to keep those clean, and how much care and attention is put on the grounds and the construction and the cleanliness of what is in the temple. Well, of course, our bodies are temples. In fact, they're the real temples. They're the eternal temples. And this fentanyl is just a great example of, or a horrific example of what these substances can do to our bodies. This is Jade Crawford, who's the executive director of the New Community Leadership Foundation there in the San Francisco area. And he says, just the police's presence will make a difference. Yeah, that's pretty logical. And you have to think for a minute here about most of the inner city residents across the country. They want the police there. They want more police there. So why is there such a cry out by a bunch of elitist, mostly white individuals to defund the police? It's, in many ways, appropriation of safety. It's the appropriation of safety for these individuals. Kind of just a very odd thing to. It's critical social justice that ends up tweaking things like this and making bizarre claims and agendas that have no reason behind them, and they simply use compassion and irresponsible compassion, to use Reverend Brown's words, in order to accomplish their agenda. They have a different end in mind, and it's certainly not the safety of the individuals in those areas. Secondly, I've noticed in media that there's a lot more Merry Christmas than there has been in the past several years. I was watching ESPN the other night, and there's a big Merry Christmas event, and they're saying Merry Christmas, and they've got it big bold letters up on the screen. It's a definite turn. It's a positive turn from where we've been. But what is also interesting is I've paid a lot of attention on when Christmas shopping this year, and saying Merry Christmas to whoever is helping me with the purchase, right? And I have yet to have someone say Merry Christmas back. The best I got was a Happy Holidays. But most people, several people, were much more, they usually didn't say anything, or thanks. They usually didn't say anything, and I can't help but think that there is a training that is given by the corporations with this time of year and what you're supposed to say and how you respond. Or a lot of those helping out are of a younger generation. And you have to wonder if the culture, the change in these things and using these terms has affected them that much, to the point where they don't think it's appropriate to say Merry Christmas. YouTube doesn't participate in this. You know, when you're a content creator on YouTube and you've got your own channel, when the comments come in on the videos, one thing it does is it gives you options to respond, right? So there's like little phrases, you know, glad to hear from you, or really appreciate it, or, you know, little things like this. Well, this time of year, of course, a lot of people say to me, Merry Christmas in their comments. And so what does YouTube do? Every single time, and this is over the last several years, I mean, at least 100 times, they go through, the responses are Happy Holidays. That's the only response they give, even if the comment specifically says Merry Christmas. I think that's pretty odd that you wouldn't include that. I've always thought, well, I'm going to go in and try something else, you know, like Happy Hanukkah, or just another holiday or something, and see if it comes back with Happy Hanukkah, you know, or something else. I don't know. I think it's pretty odd. Lastly, we have prayer coming back to second hour. I think that this, you know, I think it was a mistake. I think it was a mistake that we did not have prayer in second hour. Think about that. It's just sets the tone, and we desperately need this, I think. And this is effective immediately. So this weekend, in second hour, in Sunday school, or I'm trying to think of what week this is, Elders Quorum, Relief Society, etc. There's going to be prayer in the second hour to begin the second hour. I think that's crucial. Set the tone, invite the Spirit. There's just a difference, I believe, when you do that. And so that's good to see. Thanks for listening.